Sandy Says Read, and welcome to the channel. Today, you guys, we are going to interview the lovely Morgan Richter. She is a Duran sister, and she is the author of the upcoming release, The Divide, from Knopf Publishing. So the first thing I want to do is give you guys just a quick synopsis of who Morgan is. I have her bio here that I can read to introduce you to her, and then we're going to dive in and talk to her a little bit. So Morgan Richter is a graduate of the Filmic Writing program at the University of Southern California's Film School and has worked in production on several television shows, including ABC's America's Funniest Home Videos and E! Entertainment Television's Emmy-winning comedy series Talk Soup. An avid popular culture critic, she is the author of Duranalysis, essays on the Duran Duran experience, and has amassed a cult following on her analyses of classic Duran Duran videos. While she has self-published 5 novels, her traditional publishing debut is The Divide. It's a neo-noir thriller from Knopf, and her thriller, The Understudy, will be released by Knopf in 2025. Richter currently lives in Seattle, but she is joining us today to talk a little bit about her upcoming novel. So Morgan, thank you so much for joining us. It is a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much, Sandy. It is delightful finally meeting you. So this is a lot of fun.
I know we've been like exchanging Duran related emails for it feels like a couple of months, right? Mm-hmm. Which is wonderful. So the first thing I want to ask you is tell the audience a little bit about this, the filmic writing. What is that? Tell the audience about that and how exciting that is.
Yeah, Filmic Writing, it is no longer a program under that name. It used to be the name of the screenwriting program at the University of Southern California's Film School. Now I believe it is called Writing for Screen and Television, which makes a lot more sense. But when I was there, it was the Filmic Writing program. And it was a 4-year BFA program to learn how to become a screenwriter. And it was a very small program. I assume, I don't really know anything about the current program, but I assume it's very much the same. USC's film school is kind of aggressively small and competitive. And, there were 24 people in my, in the program with me. So, and it was a lot of fun. I met some amazing people who I'm still very good friends with. And it was just a great experience. USC, I came from Spokane, Washington, born and raised there, and moving to Los Angeles for USC was quite the experience, but it was great.
Okay. All right. So was the dream always to be a screenwriter, or when did the book writing come into play?
Well, my original love was book writing. And when I was growing up, I had very smart and creative parents who would always have my sister is 3 years older than I would, but who always would have us do creative writing. And especially during the summer months when we weren't in school, our dad would give us a spiral bound notebook and a prompt like, write me a story about a dragon. And you just sit down and write a story about a dragon. And I loved doing that. My parents were both avid readers, and they taught both my sister and I to be very avid readers as well. And all of our family just really liked reading and writing. And I'm extremely grateful to them for just kind of making writing just such a normal part of my life. So I went through up until high school. I was pretty sure I was just going to go straight to becoming a novelist. And then at some point, I think the dream of the film industry kind of grabbed me, probably when I was around 16 or so. And I started hearing a lot about USC's film school, which, of course, George Lucas went there. And, there was... I was extremely into Star Wars at the time. And, when I got accepted, I had my classes in the George Lucas building, which was right next to the Steven Spielberg building. And, we had the Johnny Carson soundstage right there. And you go to do things in the Frank Sinatra Theater. And it was just really, I was extremely starstruck. So I decided to do filmic writing, and I had just all of these plans to become a screenwriter. And I did work in television in production, not actually as a writer, but as a producer for quite a while, which was really fun. I have some great stories from that. But it did come to a point where I just wasn't getting anywhere as a screenwriter. I had a lot of screenplays, but that is a really hard field to break into. And once I switched to writing novels, I just never really looked back. I was going, okay, I really enjoy writing screenplays. They have a very formal, strict structure.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something very nice about adhering to that kind of structure. But then with novels, you can just kind of make them as long as you want, and you can go anywhere you want, and you don't have to worry about this happening by page 30 and this happening by page 60 and having your inciting incident in the first 10 pages. You can just kind of do whatever you want. And so I would never say no to writing another screenplay, but I do think novels are where I want to be.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to ask you a little bit later about a screenplay, but let's not lose track of this. I want to ask about when you were first, when you're first out of your filmic writing school, when you first graduated from that, and now you're working a full-time job on what was it, the Talk Soup, or did you start with? Okay, when you
started with Talk Soup.
Okay, so you're working a full-time job, but you've got you want to write some novels on the side, you want to write screenplays on the side. So there's this other dream percolating there. I mean, how did you juggle your time or your energy or your lifestyle? I mean, what sacrifices did you have to make, or did you to do the full-time job and do this novel writing and this extra creative thing on the side?
Right. There have definitely been times in my life where I've had full-time jobs that I've just been too exhausted to do much in the way of my own writing. Talk Soup, thankfully, wasn't one of those. Talk Soup was a really fun, creative environment. And one of my weird streaks, I think, is that I keep fairly irregular hours. And like when I live with my sister now, but when I was living with myself, it was not unusual for me to get up at like 3 a.m. and make coffee and sit down and do a few hours of writing and then go to an 8-hour job. I really like working in those extremely early hours when it's still dark outside and it's extremely quiet. And I get some of my best work done at those times. And then it's great because then for the rest of the day, if I go home and I'm exhausted and I just want to sit in front of the TV or do whatever, I don't have to feel guilty. I already got those hours of work in. So the times that I've had strict 9-to-5 jobs, that's kind of been how I've worked it. But there have definitely been jobs I've had that have just been too exhausting to write. And those are times where I usually start looking for another job pretty quickly.
Okay. What I want to say is a lot of folks in the audience who come to the Sandy Says Read channel are interested in the writing and that aspect of it. And we're all out here trying to survive, right? So you've got that full-time job trying to do that, and then you want to do that dream on the side too. So everyone's trying to juggle. Everyone's trying to find, okay, how do we do that?
Yeah, and I think everyone should know there are going to be times in your life where it's just not going to be practical for whatever reason. That you have to make a living, and don't be too hard on yourself if you find yourself in a situation where, if you have a family and you have all of these obligations as well as you're working, the writing will be there. If you don't have a strict writing schedule every day, try to find time when you can, when the inspiration strikes you, but please don't be hard on yourself if you can't do it every day. I think a lot of times writers feel the need to measure up to somebody else's standard and say, if I don't write every day, I'm not really a writer or whatever it is. And it's like, no, don't worry about it. There are times that be easy on yourself. There are times that writing will be extremely pleasurable and seem like the most natural thing in the world. And there'll be other times in your life where you can't write anything to save your life, and don't worry about it.
Right. Nice. Yeah, I've seen there are, I guess online, you see people who say, you must write every day. If you're not writing every day, then you're not a writer. And I feel that's so negative. That's such a harsh thing to put on someone. It's if you're writing when you can, you're a writer. Yeah.
There are a lot of so wonderful online writing communities, and I really like all the information that's out there and all of the support you can find. But I also do want to just caution people, beware of people who give you these really hard and fast answers on what is or isn't a writer, and just that might be their experience. It doesn't have to be yours. If they write every day, that's wonderful. That's great. But if you don't, that's also wonderful. It's do whatever works for you and makes sense to you.
Nice. Nice. Okay, so let me ask, now that you've gone the traditional publishing route now, and you've got another novel that's coming out in 2025. I mean, are you doing the writing full time now?
Yes, that is just an absolute luxury. I live in Seattle, and I live with my sister, and we share an extremely small studio apartment. Like, I'm looking at her bed right now, and my bed's right that way. I mean, there's just no room in here at all. But my sister and I, you know, ever since the deaths of our parents, we were very close to our parents, and we were very close to each other. We moved in together, and my sister has always had, she is brilliant. She went to Cornell, and she, you know, was a math major, and she does computers, and she took a class from Carl Sagan, was one of her professors at Cornell.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I know.
Amazing.
She's just got this mind and a half on her, but also one of the wonderful things that she's done, she's just a very good person too, is she's kind of let me live with her being underemployed or having periods of being unemployed while she covers everything. And we did it. And she always puts it as, she is the very stable, like if we're doing stock markets, she's the balanced portfolio where she has just these low yield, but very reliable stocks. And I am the high yield, but high risk stocks. And yet, oddly enough, that risk paid off. I have a extremely good book deal with Knopf, and I've just been overjoyed about it, which a lot of it is luck. But, I tell people, when I had the process with The Divide, this current book went extremely smoothly, and just a kind of a very short time of getting an absolute rock star agent. And it was on submission 2 weeks, and she sold it for,
oh my gosh,
in a 2-book deal for a very nice amount of money. It was just absolutely life-changing. I have film and television agents attached to it. It's, an absolutely different experience, and on the one hand, that all happened very fast, but I often tell people the first year I queried agents was 1995. So it's not like this has been an overnight success. It's been very fast success on this particular project, but there's been a lot of work going into it. So.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, put a pin in that, because I obviously want to come back to that for my audience, but I wanted to ask you, obviously your schedule is going to look different today than it did back in the day. Talk us through, okay, what is a typical writing day like for you? And I know we writers don't have typical days, but kind of walk us through what's it like for you now that writing is your full-time occupation?
Yeah. I usually do my writing in the afternoon now. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I do prefer those wee hours of the morning, but also, as I mentioned earlier, I share a studio apartment with one other person, and it's not polite to be up at 3 a.m. working when you share one room. So I usually, my sister works at the university, and I walk with her in the morning. It's about a 3-mile walk. And then after I leave her at 9 a.m., I do really long walks around Seattle, which I really like. I've always been I think long walks for me are really a vital part of my writing process. And that seems strange, but it's where I do a lot of problem solving, especially if I'm trying to hammer out a plot, or if I have something in my story that's just simply not working. For whatever reason, really long walks are the best time for me to work through them. And usually by the time I get home, I have some sort of idea. So oftentimes I don't really actually start writing until probably around noon, and then I have the rest of the day to write. But which is actually a dramatic shift from when I was living by myself in Los Angeles, where I would, as I mentioned, do the bulk of my writing really early. One thing I try is to be as flexible as I can and not have a situation where I say, I can only write in the morning, or I can only write at home, or I can only write under these circumstances. I think I have a tendency to, kind of not want to get out of my comfort zone. And I think it's really good for me to sometimes, write at the downtown library, write in a coffee shop, write in different sets of circumstances, stay up late and write instead of doing it in the morning. I just think it's kind of good not to get into that mindset of this is the only time I can do it, that otherwise it won't get done.
Right. Okay. I like that. I like that a lot. That's nice. Yeah, kind of like forcing yourself out of that comfort zone. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I personally, I can write anywhere, like on an airplane, at the airport, I will write notes on my hand when I'm in the grocery store line, right?
That is a great skill to have.
I just do it anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I dig that. Yeah.
That's very
nice.
good.
Okay, so I do want to, let's go back to that spot where we put a pin in it. I do want to ask you about, getting your agent and that process. I know my audience is going to be interested in, okay, how did Morgan get her agent? You said you did some querying back in 95.
Yeah, I have queried at so many times throughout my life. I can't and in 95 that was for a screenplay, and I can't even tell you how many times I've tried to query projects and have gotten nowhere. And then in 2006, when I was in Los Angeles, I actually queried a book that I got an agent off of, and then he ghosted me, which I have since heard that that's not entirely uncommon, unfortunately, in the agent world, where he accepted me and I accepted him, and he said he'd get back to me with notes, and he never did. And then he started dodging my calls. And after a while, it was just very clear that he was not going to represent me. And it was, and I took
so unprofessional.
It's so unprofessional. It was the thing that I was sending him just very good professional emails saying, I gather from your silence that this isn't working out. I just would kind of like confirmation so that I can go and query this project again. And he just wouldn't reply to those. And it would just, I gave him the easiest, gentlest way out where it's clear I'm not going to blow up at him. I'm disappointed, but life goes on. These things happen. No, and he didn't even give me that courtesy, which again, the wonderful thing with social media these days, and like Twitter is a really good one for this, is hearing the stories of other people who have gone through that. Because in 2006, I didn't know that I hadn't, exactly. I thought I'd done something just so terribly wrong. And for all I know, I did. But you hear nowadays that this happens, even most agents are really good people, but some will behave terribly unprofessionally. So there have been multiple times I've queried. And, I used to query back in the days where the only way you could find agent addresses was you'd go to the library and check out the book of the writer's marketplace.
Yes, I've done that. Yes,
and maybe Xerox the pages, and it was just the worst. And where you'd query, you'd send in a self-addressed stamped envelope that they'd send back your rejection letter in your own envelope. And once you'd get that, you just knew it was a rejection. You go, why did I pay for a stamp just for a rejection letter?
Right.
At one point, I had so many rejection letters on a project, paper ones that I'd receive in the mail, that I decoupaged a coffee table with all of the rejection letters.
Nice.
I was probably like bad karma or bad feng shui or something to have all of those rejections there, but they looked nice as a decoupaged coffee table. So, but anyway, going ahead to 2022, which is when I started querying the divide, it was a totally different process. And a lot of it is just, I had, for whatever reason, and you can't predict this, it is largely luck, the right book at the right moment, where I started querying it, and right from the beginning, it was obvious that something was different. Like I'd got a lot of full requests from agents, and I'd get the really good kind of rejections, like going, I have something kind of similar to this on my list, so I can't take on this project, but let me know whatever your next project is, or things like that. And I had queried one agent at an agency, and she had held on to my query for a while, and she passed it to another agent in her agency, who passed it to the founding editor of that agency, who wasn't taking on clients anymore. And the founding agent was the first agent to offer representation to me. which was wonderful. And she was great. And I liked her a lot. And then, so I went to all of the other agents who had my full manuscript and said, I've got an offer. I gave them 2 weeks to get their offers in or step aside. And I got 2 other agents who offered representation. So I had 3 agents who offered representation. And the hardest thing was deciding between all 3 of them because they were great and I could not have made a wrong decision. I went with my agent, Carrie Sparks at LGR, which, and she is just a really great person and a rock star of an agent. We had enough kind of a similar background where kind of, I'm a little older than she is, but we're both kind of the same generation. And she was also both from the Pacific Northwest and lived in Los Angeles for a long time. And so we had a lot of kind of the similarities, but also she had a lot of the skill set that I know I'm lacking. And this will be a really good partnership in that I tend to be a little passive. And if I ask for something and somebody tells me no, I'll be like, okay, that's fine. Thank you. And she's more of just kind of a pit bull where if she's extremely nice and always extremely positive and extremely friendly, but she's really good at getting in there and getting things done and getting what she wants, which is exactly what you want for an agent. And you know, she knows the publishing industry backwards and forwards and has a lot of valuable connections. And so it just was a really great partnership from the start where, she sent The Divide on submission in after Labor Day in so September of 2022. And we had an offer by less than 2 weeks later.
Jeez, that's amazing. That
was
awesome.
Just amazing. And I met with, at that time, it was Anchor, which was an imprint of Knopf. And but Anchor has since gone away. And so my book is being published by Knopf instead, which, by the way, when I first got the offer from Knopf, I didn't realize that the K is not silent. I've spent my entire life
always,
Knopf.
Me
it's
too.
Knopf,
yes.
You know,
that's funny.
I found that out. So now that I'm actually an author with Knopf, I've been pretty good at saying Knopf, but every once in a while I still slip up and say Knopf. But anyway, Anchor at the time, the imprint of Knopf, made a preempt and we took it. It was great. Nice. Yeah. So it was wonderful. Not only that, but before Anchor made their offer, about a week after it was on submission, the film and television scouts at UTA in Los Angeles asked my agent if they could handle the film rights for it.
Nice. Jeez.
Which is
that's
amazing.
Great.
And that's again, that is a tribute to my agent because her agency is extremely tuned into the film and television side of it, and they've had the agency they represent Gillian Flynn, of course, who wrote Gone Girl, and so they're really, really good at if their authors are interested in the film and television side of it, they're actually extremely forward in going out and making sure film and television industry knows that this project is out there. So that's been wonderful.
It just makes perfect sense. I'm able to assist in making that happen.
That would be wonderful.
Makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to be clear, the film and television rights have not sold yet, which is that's a process that I'm kind of disconnected from, and I don't really know what goes on there. But the UTA agents know that I have the screenwriting background, and if the opportunity presents itself, oftentimes that's something oftentimes when the film rights sell, they don't want the author, to be involved at all, but quite often they do. It's just kind of it entirely depends. And so I understand entirely. It might be a situation when and if they sell that they won't want me to be involved, but I've let them know if that's a possibility, I am extremely interested in that.
I am so available. Yeah.
I cannot tell you how available I am.
Nice. Oh, that's great. Okay. I want to pop over here and talk about The Divide. So let me read for the audience the back cover. And I have that here on the screen. I want to share this with the audience first. This is from the back cover of The Divide. A failed actress turned grifting psychic searches for her missing doppelganger and is plunged into a web of murder and corruption among Hollywood A-listers. When Jenny St. John was 18, she moved to Los Angeles from her rural Midwestern hometown and scored the lead role in an independent film called The Divide. Under the intimate direction of young auteur Serge Grummett, Jenny was on her way to becoming the next indie darling, but then the movie tanked, and Jenny never caught a second break. Now, 2 decades later, after floundering on the fringes of the entertainment industry, she's barely keeping afloat, running a low-level grift as a psychic life coach. But when news surfaces that Serge has been murdered, Jenny's life is turned upside down. Unbeknownst to Jenny, Serge's ex-wife, painter Gina Santos, looks alarmingly similar to Jenny, so much so that when Gina goes missing, the cops think Jenny is Gina. Jenny finds herself pulled into Gina's world and manages to leverage both her resemblance to Gina and her faux psychic abilities to infiltrate the affluent yet unstable inner circle of friends, which include a Korean pop idol turned social media star and an Oscar-winning actress turned wellness guru. Soon, Jenny's search to find Gina unearths dark secrets about her own past while putting her squarely in the sights of a killer. Okay. Now, I didn't get to read the back cover before I dove into the book and read the book. So I had none of that. I went in totally blind. Yeah,
Oh, no.
but I thoroughly enjoyed the book anyway. I got to see all the twists and turns coming at me on the page without any of that back cover knowledge. So I will do my best not to ask anything that gives away any twists and turns that weren't hinted on the back cover while we talk here. But I want you to please tell me some stuff about Jenny St. John. I want to talk about her a little bit, and I want to hear what research you did, or if any, that you had to do for the body language and the behavior, the human behavior study that she's able to do. I mean, as we learned on the back cover just there, she's not really psychic, but she is able to study people. She knows what people are thinking. She can figure people out by looking at them, by following what they're doing. And you peg that perfectly. I mean, you've got it in this book, and you show it to the reader perfectly. What did you study? Where did you research this? How did you get that right?
Well, the very first inkling I ever had, or it wasn't even an idea at the time, but kind of the first start that became The Divide was, back at Christmas of 2008, my mother died very unexpectedly. And it was just, I was living in Los Angeles and my parents were in Minnesota. And it was the day that I was flying home to see them at Christmas. About 2 hours before leaving for the airport, I got the call from my dad that she had had a heart attack and heart failure and died. And it was just horrible. And, somehow our family made it through Christmas. And then in early January, I flew back to Los Angeles, and just the whole world had changed. And my first time out in Los Angeles since my mom had died, I was wandering around, and, I lived in, kind of the Mid-Wilshire area, of the same area where Jenny has her clinic in The Divide, by a very posh shopping center called The Grove, and it's all Beverly Hills adjacent. And I was just out walking around, and I had a psychic stop me on the sidewalk where she had just this little boutique right there, and she said, well, I can see from your face that you're going through some things. I know this psychically. Would you like to come in and sit down and talk with me about it? And she was really pushy about it. And she was very nice. And my influence for Jenny. But I was so mad at her in the moment, because it was like, you are reading my body language. My mom just died. This is not, I'm not sitting here going, wow, that's so amazing. You know that something just terrible has happened and you want to talk to me about it. I was just, you were literally reading my body language, and
Right.
you, and I felt just this great anger towards her, and just kind of uh, mulling it over and just kind of getting this idea for Jenny, who is a fake psychic, who is, on the one hand, she's very sympathetic. She's just
Mhm.
trying to survive. She was an actress. That hasn't been going very well. She's been evicted from her apartment. She's like literally living in this little, she calls it her clinic, which is kind of a highfalutin way of just, it's where she does tarot card readings. And
Right.
she is scamming people. And at the start of the book, she's kind of reconciled herself to it. But as the book goes on, it's kind of starts to dawn on her that she might be doing some damage here, that we all do what we need to do to survive, but maybe there are some things you shouldn't be doing. And so that was sort of the first thing. But so I sort of took my inspiration from this psychic who accosted me on the sidewalk, who again seemed like a very nice lady and had a very good demeanor to her, and was very, just like, well, why don't you just, my shop is right here, why don't you come in and sit down and we can talk about this, I can help you sort through things. And I was just so mad, going, no, you want money out of me, and my mom just died, and maybe it will make me feel better to talk with you about it, but I'm just so mad at you right now.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know if that really answers your question, but it was just sort of that idea of, she was reading my body language and came up with
Right.
something that I'm going, well, no kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the
Right.
worst day of my life. So, I'm
Right.
glad you
Yeah.
realized that I'm sad about something.
Right. Right. Okay. All right. Well, and I like the fact that, I mean, Jenny, she realizes, yeah, she's scamming people, but she's also she's responsible with it. I mean, she's not telling people big lies and then just taking the money. I mean,
Right.
like the gal who's the waitress or the barista at the coffee
Mhm.
shop, who wants to get the acting job. She tells her, well, you're probably not going to get this one, but if you do this and this, I mean, she gives her like life advice.
Yeah.
She's helping her. She's trying to help her, and she's not trying to scam her. She's trying to help her. And
Yeah.
I saw Jenny as, like you said, sympathetic. I did see her as very sympathetic, and I don't know, I liked her a lot. In case you haven't picked up on
Good. I'm
that, I like
glad.
Jenny a lot.
I like
I
Jenny
really,
too.
yeah, I really like the fact that she was, I mean, even though she was almost scamming people, trying to survive, she was also trying to be good about it. She was trying to be careful. She was trying to give good advice about it. She was trying.
Yeah.
I could see she was trying. Yeah. Let's see. And you've already answered this question now, because I was going to say, you have Jenny's origin story in Iowa, but
Mhm.
you yourself, it looks like, from reading the different bios that I've seen on you, you've been like mostly on the coasts. So I was going to
Right.
ask, well, so how come she
Yeah.
started in the Midwest, but you also have Minnesota in the Midwest?
Yeah. My
That's how.
mother was born and raised in Minnesota,
Okay.
on a farm, and
Oh,
southern Minnesota, right
okay.
by the Iowa border.
Okay.
And yeah, and so we would visit Minnesota a lot growing up. And then
Okay.
I lived, born and raised in Spokane, Washington. But
Mhm.
after I graduated from high school, my parents moved back to Minnesota, and they stayed there until they died. My dad was from Spokane and from Washington
Okay.
State, but
Okay.
but yeah, he moved with my mom, because at that point her mother was getting on in years, and she had
Mm.
just spent her entire adult life. My parents actually met and married in Washington, D.C., which is where my sister was born, and then they moved to my dad's hometown of Spokane.
Okay.
So they'd been all around, but my mom was feeling like she had just kind of lost connection with Minnesota and wanted to move back there. So I think
Okay.
that was really good for her.
Ask you, what is something that you love about Jenny St. John? What is something about that character that you enjoyed writing?
I like that Jenny is, she's, I never really write characters that are kind of avatars for myself or anything like that. There's no self insertion. But I think personality wise, I share enough of things with Jenny in that Jenny is pretty contained, and she doesn't always say what she's feeling. And I think she's had some hard knocks in life and has sort of learned not to really put herself out there, because people, especially in Hollywood, are very willing to knock you right down. But so I think there is something about her that she's, I kind of look at her as, because The Divide is a mystery, but it's also very much a noir, as just not even really a noir heroine where we think of these the mysterious blonde women who come in and very classic noir women, but she's more like the noir detective who kind of is a little bit repressed and a little bit cynical, and I think Jenny's also very funny, but that she's almost always in pretty good control. And I think Jenny is very good at, she's got a good heart, but she's also opportunistic enough, like when she sees a way to kind of level up a little by when Boots first approaches her and asks her for her help with this mystery, Jenny's like, yeah, you bet. I can make a little bit of money.
I can do this.
I can join this kind of this upper Hollywood circle of friends where Jenny has felt so marginal for so long. And now all of a sudden she has rich and famous friends that she's hanging out with. And I think she's pretty quick to grab onto that. So,
yeah. What other characters, other than Jenny, were there any others in there that you just, like, you really looked forward to writing? Like you wanted them to have more pages, more time on the page?
I like Boots a lot, who is Jenny's, becomes kind of a friend of Jenny's. I don't know how necessarily likable Boots is, and I don't know if you're necessarily supposed to like Boots. She's was an Oscar-winning actress who became kind of a wellness skincare influencer. And so there's a little bit of, I suppose, Gwyneth Paltrow with Goop in there with Boots, but also this is an embarrassing confession, but I used to watch an awful lot of America's Next Top Model. And so there's a little bit of Tyra Banks in Boots, where just extremely ambitious. And I remember my editor at Anchor, which became Knopf, Caitlin, said of Boots that she kind of loves Boots, where that Jenny's approach to Boots was, Boots is terrible. I want to be best friends with Boots, where she's sort of that friend you have who is at sometimes really generous, and then it's sometimes kind of unpredictable and can kind of leave you hanging, but sort of comes through at the end for Jenny, and sort of shows herself to be, a pretty good, I don't even know if she's a pretty good friend to Jenny, but she is, they have something in common, and there's definitely an affection between them.
Yeah, I there were a couple of times when I was like, okay, Boots she's problematic and she better come through. She better not fail here. Like I was afraid she wasn't going to pay Jenny for her services at one point. I'm like, hey, now.
That is exactly what my sister said when she first read it, where my sister was like, yeah, she was on the edge of her seat going, I bet Boots is going to weasel out of paying the Jenny's psychic bill. But no, she doesn't. She's better than that. She's
good for it. Yeah, I was getting upset with that. Okay, so I want to ask, The Divide, the movie, the actual movie that sort of started this, is that a screenplay? Have you written it? Are you going to write it? How does that exist in the real world, in our world?
No, but that is a fabulous idea. And I will say The Divide, which in the book, it's where Jenny plays a character in this film, The Divide, who slips through parallel universes. And that sounds very much like something I would have written when I was at USC. I did almost exclusively science fiction at USC. And so I think that's a great idea, actually, to write it as a screenplay and see The Divide, the film within the book, as a movie.
Yeah, very meta. That would be wonderful. All right. I think those are all the questions that I had set for us, but I want to welcome you to tell us, what have I forgotten to ask about the book? What is something that you want the audience to come away with? What is something that I've forgotten to ask that the audience should know about The Divide?
I would say that my overall theme of The Divide is just kind of that dividing line, and it's especially in Hollywood, but it really applies to all walks of life. And it certainly applies to anyone who's been trying to be a writer. It's the dividing line that's invisible, but it's so important between what we perceive as success and what we perceive as failure. And for so many years, I found myself on the side of the line that Jenny has found herself in. And especially after I graduated from USC. And I had classmates who are extremely famous now, and they deserve it, and they're smart and talented, and they've done a really good job. It is a little strange where, you know, I'm so happy for them for being successful, but there were so many years in LA where it was just kind of the feeling like, well, what am I doing wrong though? Because it's some of it's luck, obviously, but that's not all it is. And I think it's Jenny finding herself having been, you know, for so many years trying to hang on to the success of, you know, this thing of, she came out to LA when she was 18 and she got cast in this film and she did a really good job in the film, and it's not her fault that the film didn't get released. And so she kind of keeps seeing how her life has gone in a direction she doesn't want it to go. And then there's the character of Jenna, who is in Jenny's doppelganger, who looks exactly like Jenny, and they have kind of similar names. And yet Jenna is a painter, which is something that Jenny always wanted to do. She always had an interest in art and had made a decision to go into acting instead. And so it's that divide of seeing a splintered off life that she really wishes she had pursued. And especially because Jenna has, an 8-figure deal with this endorsement deal with a big fashion label. And she's got a great house and she's got a hot boyfriend and all of these outer markings of success that Jenny kind of looks over and goes, okay, if I made different decisions in my life, I would not be on this side of that divide between success and failure. So I think throughout the book, there's all kinds of divisions that if you look for them. And so that's kind of one of the things that sort of interests me, especially when I was rewriting, where I'm going, how can I bring out those themes of divides more?
Nice. All right. I also wanted to have you tell the audience where they can find you online. Where can we stalk you?
You can stalk me in a lot of places. I am on Twitter. You can find me at my personal website, which is morganrichter.net. I am also on Blue Sky, sort of. But another big place is that I am on YouTube, where I haven't done any new videos in a couple of years. But I have 2 series because I am extremely invested in 1980s nostalgia, being a Gen Xer. Right. So I have 2 series, and one of them is When Gen X Ruled the Multiplex, in which I looked at 100 films that theoretically shaped the lives of Gen Xers, but in a lot of cases, I think they were films that shaped the life of Morgan Richter specifically, because some of these films, everyone's going, I have never heard of that. So, I can't really speak for a universal thing, but these are 100 films that shaped me. And then the other one is that I dissected every single episode of Miami Vice in depth on YouTube. Well, so that was a lot of fun. Okay. But yeah, so those are the major places that you can find me. And then I pop up here and there, but I'm pretty easy to find. Okay,
very good. All right, well, I want to thank you so much for joining me this evening and for sharing this information with my Sandy Says Read audience. I welcome everyone out there to check out The Divide.
Thank you very much. The Divide is going to be here, but I also, as long as we're doing this, I want to invite everyone to check out Sandy's book, which I provided a blurb for, the Duran Duran book, which is just a tremendous amount of fun. And I was delighted Sandy had, I think that was the first time we interacted, was you had asked me if I would provide a blurb for it. We were introduced through a mutual friend. And I was like, I'm game for anyone writes about Duran Duran, I am there. And you did a delightful book. So I want people to check that out as well.
It was fun, that is for sure, putting that together. All right. Okay. Everyone out there, please subscribe to the channel. Please invite your friends to subscribe to the channel too. Give this a thumbs up so the algorithm knows that this was cool stuff to look into. And thank you so much